for me, with my age, coming to get my first degree at about 50, I think I'm well prepared because I was in the armed forces for about 16 years. And I had to go through college because I decided to change my career so that I can be able to make a difference to the world generally. So, and that's why I'm here. So I'm well prepared.
I think so. I guess we're taught like transferable skills, and we have scenario-based lectures where we get to learn more about dealing with people outside of uni.
At the moment in time, I probably wouldn't say so, but you know, it's still early doors now. Hopefully, in a couple of months, couple of years' time, hopefully, I'll be better off.
I feel like I know what's happening. I know what I'm doing. We've got loads of like practice interviews, people coming in, and events where we have to like show our portfolios to like industry and networking events. So I think so, yeah.
I don't feel prepared enough at all. I think it puts me, I feel more grounded than I did before I came to university.
Definitely now I've taken a year in work, definitely that has prepared me more.
Yes, planning to study further, so yeah.
Yeah, with doing the placement, it's made me feel like I'm ready to go out and get a job.
I would say I'm quite prepared for out there, but at the same time, because I'm a bit nervous at the same time for what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think I've got some good plans down the line as to what I want to go into. So I've got a good vision as to where I would like to go, and I think the future's bright.
So a range of views there from students, from some saying they don't feel very well prepared at all, to others saying they feel quite well prepared, although understandably perhaps a bit nervous. So this session is all about the future of skills and of employment, and I'm delighted to be joined on the stage by Claudia Harris and Joysy John. We're going to start off this session by hearing from Joysy. She's the Director for Education at NESTA, and she is going to talk to us about some research they've done on employment in 2030. And without wanting to steal your thunder, I think it's fair to say that you outline a much more optimistic view of the future than the one that we sometimes hear. We're then going to hear from Claudia Harris, who's the CEO of the Careers and Enterprise Company, and she is going to talk about, given the fact that we can't, of course, predict the future, what can we do to make sure that students have the best possible chance of ending up in good employment when they leave university or higher education. Each of them will speak for about 7 minutes, and then we'll have about 10 minutes or so for a discussion at the end where we'll look at some of the themes that they've both covered and what that means in particular for the OFS. So first of all, over to you, Joyce.
Thank you, Katja. Hello, I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Joysy John. I'm the Director of Education at NESTA. And I wanted to share some key insights from the research that we've done and raise some of the questions that this research uncovers. So to start off, I would like to show a short video.
The conversation about the future of jobs and skills is one of the most important in education. A student entering formal education today will be making decisions about their career by the year 2030. But wait, we already know about the future of jobs. The robots are taking them, right? Let's take a step back. Anxiety about workers being replaced is rampant, but fear of automation is nothing new. Fears of technologically driven unemployment have arisen throughout the centuries, usually provoked by a disruption, like the Industrial Revolution. But historically, technology creates more jobs than it destroys. Of course, we don't know if it will be different this time, but we do know that automation is only one part of the story. Equally important are other interacting trends, including changing demographics, urbanization, globalization, inequality, political uncertainty, and climate change. What do we mean by interacting? Consider for a moment the following. Urbanization and globalization are trends that are interacting with and component parts of climate change, all of which are driving the green sector. Currently, the green economy is creating new jobs faster than jobs are disappearing in the polluting sectors. But in the face of increasing inequality, the high consumer cost of green energy could slow demand and job growth. In addition, investments in green technologies are deeply intertwined with government policy, making prospects even more uncertain. Understanding how these trends interact is clearly complex. It is also critical to understanding the jobs and skills needed in the future. That's why Pearson teamed up with researchers from NESTA and the Oxford Martin School to move the conversation past automation. Our forward-looking research combines the best of human expertise with the power of machine learning to understand the trends and make more nuanced forecasts than previously possible. What did we find? The future of work is brighter than you might think. And what's the best way to prepare for the future? We invite you to explore the future of skills employment in 2030.
So every day we hear about robots taking our job. There's so much negative coverage in the media. But will automation really displace more than 50% of jobs in US and UK within the next 10 to 15 years? As the video showed, that parallel to automation, there's a broader set of trends that are happening. Automation, environmental changes, economic changes, and these are going to have a profound impact. So NESTA's research is very unique. I think it's the most rigorous research out there that combines the trends that are happening with human insights and machine learning to really break down hundreds of job categories into their skills and predict what will happen to them in the future. This chart plots the percentage likelihood of increasing and declining demand of professional and trade occupations as specified by the Office of National Statistics. And we've done similar analysis for the UK. You'll see that 8% of jobs will see an increase in demand, whereas 25% of jobs will see a decrease in demand as compared to the future workforce. But the large majority of them, more than 70%, have very uncertain demand. So nobody can really predict the future, but we've done the best we can in terms of getting the data and doing a rigorous analysis. There are some jobs, as you would expect, like sales and customer service jobs, or even some jobs like construction, where there is going to be a decrease in demand. But job creation is going to be as dynamic as job destruction. There will be significant growth in hospitality, in teaching, in public service jobs, elder care. I think the crucial part of this analysis is really asking what are the skills that are going to be in more demand in the future. And these are the top 10 skills as per our research. So cognitive skills, collaboration, emotional and social skills, systems thinking. These skills are really going to be essential in how new jobs and how there is going to be more demand for jobs in the future. The other question that we asked ourselves is, what are going to be some additional skills that are going to help someone who is already in a job? So take, for example, the customer service occupation, which is likely to see a decrease in demand in the future. And some of the current skills that are needed are oral expression, oral comprehension, personal service. But if you can add these additional skills like judgment and decision making, fluency of ideas, and originality, then there will be higher demand in a world that is uncertain and changing. Take, for example, business and professional services. Things like English language, oral expression, and oral comprehension are key features of that job now. But in the future, you would need to understand science, operations analysis, and originality. We saw that a lot of the jobs that we analyzed had things like judgment, decision-making, fluency of ideas that will help with better demand in the future. The other question we asked ourselves is, what are going to be likely occupations that are going to come up in the future? And we came up with 2 hypothetical occupations, and these are some of the 5 different skills that they'll be comprised of. The first one uses high levels of creativity and combines arts and technology skills. The second one is much more, it resembles hospitality and sales managerial occupations where things like originality, communication skills, decision-making skills will be important. So what are some skills that exist today that are closest to these hypothetical skills? I'm not saying that we all need to go become artists or florists, but you'll see that high levels of creativity will be needed in the skills, in the jobs of the future. And these are some examples of jobs that exist today. So in closing, I think the future is bright as long as we invest in building the skills and knowledge that are needed. There are opportunities for boosting growth if our education and training system are agile enough to adapt to the future and respond appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joysy, for that upbeat assessment and a dose of optimism. We're now going to hear from you, Claudia, about the work that you've been doing at the Careers and Enterprise Company.
Thank you, Katja. So, hello, I'm Claudia Harris, and I'm the Chief Exec of the Careers and Enterprise Company. And we were set up 2.5 years ago to work with schools to help prepare young people for their future. And the question we asked was, in light of the enormous uncertainty around the future, even with all the amazing work that's going on by organisations such as NESTA, how on earth do you prepare young people for this future that's so uncertain? And the first thing that we did is that we looked at the best research on what remains true over time. What are the best things that we can do to equip young people, really whatever the jobs of the future look like? And this is what we found. It's research by the Gatsby Foundation, and it says that young people need 3 things fundamentally. The first is that they need encounters. They need encounters with the world of work, with higher education and with further education. And this is unbelievably important because young people need to be able to imagine a future, to be able to make a plan, to be able to even have any agency over their career planning. And when I took this job, I thought it was all going to be about information, the second one, telling them what the jobs of the future were going to be, the skills of the future, how the curriculum linked to careers. But all the time that we do work with young people, what keeps on being true is that actually the majority of young people are not looking at big data sets. They are not looking at that online resource that we all want to create. They are not thinking about the future. The future for them is their 16th birthday. And the only way that we can get young people to really take agency and to really connect them is to make it visual. And unless we are ourselves doing that and reflecting things into schools that we want to draw out of those schools, young people make their plans based on what they've seen on television or what they see at home. So these encounters are just unbelievably important. Then young people also need information. They need to know about the jobs of the future, and they need to know about how the curriculum links to careers, and we'll talk a bit more about that. And then they need a plan. What are they going to do? What is their way of assimilating that information and making their own careers plan? So when we were set up, we wanted to see how is this happening in schools today? So how many schools are delivering their young people all of these different opportunities? And this work by the Gatsby Foundation has laid out the different things that young people need. They need these encounters, this information, this plan, and it breaks it out. So encounters with employers, encounters with higher and further education, experiences of the workplace. And this is a sample of 600 schools, and this is where they are today. So the bright blue is the percentage of schools that are achieving any given benchmark, which means that every single one of their young people get this opportunity. The dark red are partially achieving it, which generally means some of their students are, and the purple means that they're not achieving it. Now, what you'll see, and the one that's particularly relevant for this group, is the encounters with further and higher education, which is the third one down. And actually, only in 8% of schools are young people having the encounters with further and higher education that the Gatsby Foundation says that young people should have. Now, in fact, what really drives this is the encounters with further education and apprenticeships. So engagement with higher education is really much, much higher than engagement with these other routes. But we still see that there's quite a long way to go to get young people all of this activity. The good news is that things are getting better. So over the last 2 years, schools have made progress in terms of delivering against these benchmarks. The proportion of schools that are not delivering against any of them has fallen from 30% to 20%. The proportion of schools that are hitting half of these benchmarks has gone up from 6% to 16%. And there's now a cohort of schools hitting all of the benchmarks. So we went to talk to those schools and we looked at what were they doing. And on the whole, they had somebody in the school air traffic controlling this programme of activity for their young people. And the career strategy that was announced by the government in December now requires all schools to have this careers leader. Very important step forward in terms of careers. And we could also look at all of this data we were getting back in terms of what schools were doing, and we could say to them, look, on the whole, these are the 10 things that if you start doing them will make a difference. And one of the key things is giving all students access to all routes. So don't streamline students too early on and allow them to make their own choices. So our work at the Careers and Enterprise Company is to build networks across England to link schools to local employers. Now, over time, we're now being asked to look at university connections as well, and also look at those questions around information and making a plan. But our initial remit was connections to employers. And to do this, we have put down coordinators, 120 of them, working with clusters of 20 schools. And in 2.5 years, 2,000 of the mainstream secondaries in England have come on board with this, way faster than most people said they would. Lots of people said schools don't care about careers, and actually we are not demand constrained at all. We need to get to this full 3,500, but we're seeing really rapid progress. We put into each one of these schools a coordinator, a paid-for coordinator, and also a business volunteer to work with the head teacher and make a plan to deliver against the Gatsby benchmarks. And this is the diversity of our network. These business people come from large and small businesses, different industries. They're half men and women. And we've seen impact. So among the schools that we're working with, there's been a 50% improvement in these encounters with business. They're all working with more businesses as a result. And the business volunteers that we're putting in are very satisfied. So we're making progress on employer engagement. But the next horizon for us now is to look across all of those benchmarks. Engagement with higher education, engagement with further education, information, making sure that schools understand some of the work that's coming out of NESTA, and helping young people make a plan. And to do that, we're using this research as our baseline. Schools can do a diagnostic against this research. And we are also making sure that we are really focusing our resource in the geographic areas of need, or the cold spot areas of the country, typically the periphery, the darker areas on this map. So from December onwards, we have been tasked to be working on this careers engagement, not just with employers, but across universities, across further education, thinking more deeply about information. And so we will be really looking forward to working with all of you on this. Our work starts in 20 clusters, and we'll be announcing those 20 careers hubs over the next few months. So 20 areas of the country will be starting to ramp this up, but we'll be looking to do full rollout over the coming years. And as we think about universities going back into schools, I think one of the principles that we can really draw on that's really informed our work with employers is the importance of relatability, making it real for young people. We say to employers, send into schools the type of people that you want to draw out of them. To really get young people excited about the future, you have to show them role models who are like them. And I think as we think about diversity in our universities, really relatable role models is so important. But we're also going to be thinking much more now about information. And one of the things that we'd love to discuss in the next few minutes is how do we really think about that? And there are two key information sets. The first, as you'll know, of course, is the LEO data, which is incredibly powerful, has huge social mobility opportunities, but also real social mobility risk. If we expect young people interpreting complex data to drive social mobility, we will not get the outcome that we want. Young people who are supported by parents and by family will make better decisions with that data. So how do we avoid that being regressive? And how do we really make sense of data that is extremely complex and where the kind of numbers that we see will often explain other sorts of things like prior attainment or geography? So we need to think deeply about how we use that information to inform young people. And then we need to sit that aside, the type of work that Joysy has been doing, and thinking about the skills of the future. How strongly do we bet on those skills of the future? How aggressively do we promote that? And how does that affect things around curriculum that may actually go much deeper than just career support, but go right into how we think about teaching and the kind of creativity that young people will need in the future? I think these are the questions that we need to grapple with at the Careers and Enterprise Company and with you collectively over the years to come, and we're really looking forward to working with you on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia, for that update, and I think really great to see the progress that you've made in a fairly short period of time. We now have about, I think, 15 minutes or so, and we thought we would just basically discuss some of the themes that both our speakers have picked up on, and as I said, also look at the implications of that for the OFS. So I thought I would start by asking both of you really about how schools, picking up on your presentation, how schools work together with further and higher education providers, and how well is that really working at the moment? You had your slide, and what in your view needs to be done. And do you want to start perhaps, Joyce?
Sure. I think there has to be a greater focus on careers and employability, and the more you can expose young people in schools with university students and with employers, the more they will have higher aspirations and motivation. So the more we can really link the two together, working with schools and university, and really emphasizing that it's not just attainment, you need to build a broader set of skill sets, whether it's collaboration, problem solving, communication, having an inquiring mind, and having role models. Claudia, you spoke about role models, and having people like me. So I'm the first one in my family to go get a degree, do a master's, and work abroad. And that happened because my parents believed in me, but also because I had the opportunity and really teachers who told me that there was something called software engineering. Nobody in my family knew what that was, and because I had amazing teachers who opened up a world that my parents didn't know, my peers didn't know, but really teachers play such a huge role, and there's so much research and high quality teaching happening in university. If you can link that back to schools and empower teachers to inspire their kids, then there won't be this fear that you see in the media. You will have people who are more proactive, who really understand the changing nature of work, and the fact that, Michael started the conversation, that learning is hard. How can you empower students to not give up, to really fight and believe that the world is changing, but they have agency, they have the ability to change their future if they really work hard and they understand the changing labor market and the skills that are needed.
So universities are really the envy of most of the organisations that want to reach into schools, because I think many people feel that universities have got this cracked in a way that, for example, apprenticeship providers have not, employers have not. UCAS, of course, creates a very clear route for young people, but also university outreach is very well developed. That said, there is always much more to do. And I think what our research shows is that actually only in 50% of schools is every young person have an encounter with a university whilst they're at school. So we need to make sure that all young people have that engagement, and we need to make sure that that engagement is really opening up young people's eyes to the various opportunities that are available to them. So I think that universities are already ahead of the game, really, in terms of schools' engagement, but there is definitely further to go, and we will be looking to work with universities in these clusters, these hubs, so really about local engagement to really increase the proportion of encounters. Success for us is that all schools move up to 100% on those benchmarks.
Thank you. And what do you think the priorities should be for the OFS in this space, either with regard to employment prospects or looking at future skill needs, or both? Claudia, do you want to start on that?
So I think the OFS has an opportunity both to reach back and to look forward. So it needs to help universities reach back into schools, really make sure that every single young person gets this encounter with the world, with the university sector. And that's just about topping up the good work that is already going on. And then there's this critical point about reaching forward into the world of work. Salaries are not everything, and we absolutely understand that. But we know that our students that we work with at school are very worried about student fees, and they are very interested in the question of what would they earn when they leave university. And I think that making sure that the OFS is really understanding and making sure that when a young person has done a degree, that they are having that benefit in terms of their earnings, is going to become more and more important. And we're going to be putting that data in the hands of schools to help schools help young people make these informed decisions. Because as I say, I think that young people can't be expected to interpret complex data and make these decisions on their own. Adults can't do it. You give them information about energy prices and they don't switch. So you can't expect really choice to be driven purely by complex data. But I think if we arm our schools, you will start to see shifts in what people decide to do based on the LEO data. And we'll want to be doing that in partnership with universities. And I think that universities and the OFS need to look forward and make sure that the story that we can tell young people is a really positive one.
I totally agree that there is an emphasis on data and really making that accessible and understandable. I also think one of the other priorities for the OFS should be making sure that students have access to really high quality learning and diverse learning experience, multidisciplinary learning, where there is not just a narrow focus on knowledge acquisition, but a broader 21st century skills development. Because yes, the world is changing, and gone are the days when students will be doing the same job throughout their career. They will need to adapt and change, and the more they have access to labor market information, the more they have access to employers, the more they have an understanding of the changes that are coming, they'll be better prepared to take on the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then probably the final question that we have time for. So this is the launch conference, obviously, today. And if we have some similar event, perhaps in a year's time, and we're sitting here again and talking about future skills and future employment, what would you like to have seen that has changed, and how would it be different a year from now compared to today, Joyce?
So I think in a year's time, when we are back here, if we can say that we've improved social mobility and provided better access and widened participation for people, and really helped young people understand the various options that they can take, and having a much common language when we talk about skills and employability and career options and the options that are open to them. Also making sure that they really make inspired career choices based on data, based on tools, but also based on access to encounters with employers.
So I think for me, 3 things. One would be that we ensure comprehensive outreach into our schools and to our young people from the higher education sector, and we just see 100% delivery on that in all schools, all young people. I think the second is a collective view on how we use the LEO data most effectively to help inform choice when young people are at school. What can we say about LEO from LEO, what can't we say? And then how do we equip young people to use it in a way that drives choice? Where is LEO about quality, where is it about choice, and who's using it for which? And then I think the third thing is Joysy's work lays out skills of the future, and I think that there is a growing consensus on what those are. I think there is not a consensus on how you build them. And so the third thing I'd like to see is increasing clarity on what we do, both in education and around the edges of education, to help to develop the skills of the future and prepare young people for this changing and exciting world of work that we see on the horizon.
Thank you. So that's it. That's all we have time for this session. So thank you to both of you. Really, really interesting presentations and lots of food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.